I have now acquired every achievement Monster Hunter Wilds has to offer. I farmed out a bunch of endgame builds, I've accumulated 100 hours of in-game time, and with that being said, I'm now in a much better substantialised position to give my thoughts on the game. I'll be discussing difficulty, in-game systems, monster roster and much more in the most non-biased manner possible, although I'll be sure to throw in my personal opinions throughout. First things first, let's address the difficulty situation, as this has been a very common theme across the internet this past week, and it would also segue us into a couple of other talking points. So low rank, yep, it's low rank, quite literally the training wheels for a new player, and even then a new player can struggle during the story. While of course overall the core low rank experience is not difficult, it's truly not intended to be, yet there's still some really cool moments, whether that be Jin Dahad, Guardian monsters, or Zoshia. Which by the way is an absolute crime that we can't fight it again. But let Capcom cook on that, I think something's coming. High rank however does have some challenging content, such as tempered monsters hitting incredibly hard. Take Arkveld for example. I've fought him a bunch in the beta and I've killed him over 40 times since the full launch of the game. Arkveld's moveset is completely second nature to me at this point, but even so, making a mistake at the wrong time, he'll cart you. Gormagala can two-shot you with a bunch of stuff, Jin Dahad will freeze you in place and one-shot you with a breath, even Duna will belly flop you to death if you have poor positioning. I do agree that tempered monsters still go down pretty quick for the most part, and non-tempered monsters are almost irrelevant at this point. Equally, many players have rushed as fast as possible to craft the mathematically most perfectly optimized sets, and then wonder why everything feels so easy. Is it a bit disingenuous? Maybe, but we also can't fully comment on difficulty without knowing what's coming in future title updates. If you're a new player you may not know this, but the version of Wilds we're playing now is not its final form. Monster Hunter games always release what are known as title updates that introduce new content, whether that be monsters, systems, new things to grind for, etc. Typically, harder content is reserved for these updates, so on that note we'll have to see what Capcom's cooking up. My personal opinion is that difficulty in Wilds is in a good place. On a personal anecdote, I've spoken to many new players in my live chat that have struggled with monsters like Guardian Do Shogama. Others have mentioned they could just about beat regular Arkveld, and so tempered Arkveld feels like way too tall of a task. With that being said, I would also like a really difficult challenge to be added via title updates, whether that be a big siege type quest or something like Alatreon. Just having that option of a change of pace would do wonders for the health of the endgame in my opinion. Generally speaking, if I was to compare Wilds to other games, I believe it to be more difficult than what Base Rise was, it's not even close, and I would personally claim it to be more challenging, or at the very least, equal to Base World. What a lot of players need to recognise is that your first Monster Hunter game will always be the hardest. No matter how much you chase that feeling of triple carting to an Anjanathian world, you're not going to get it in Wilds. It just is what it is. In fact, if your first game was World for example, and you go back and play it now, you'll have the exact same experience you had in Wilds in World. Once you learn the game, many aspects become trivialised. We touched a little bit on Endgame already here, but let's look at it in a bit more detail. For the average player or a casual player, there's enough to do in Endgame to stay entertained until the title update 1 next month. From building your endgame build, decoration farming, crafting the perfect arcane weapon, layered armour, all of this should keep you busy. However, if you're an idiot like me that puts 100 hours into launch week, there's not a whole lot left to do. Your first reaction to that should be, well, yeah, of course. After all, 100 hours of gameplay is already great value for what I paid for, and it's also way more than what the average player will invest. Secondly, the true value, fun and content in Monster Hunter games derives from, ironically enough, hunting monsters. Beyond the grinding and farming, endgame Monster Hunter is about combining the large complex weapon pool and uniquely designed monsters to create a new experience every time you launch a quest. Iceborne and Sunbreak haven't had patches for years, yet how many of us were still playing in 2024? The games are simply fun, and imagine playing a game for fun, right? Couldn't be me. Other grinds have been shortened considerably, such as 100%ing the game. A core example of this would then be crowns. For reference, on PC I have over 700 hours in Monster Hunter World, yet I only have 75% of the crowns obtained in that game. Yet, in under 100 hours in Wilds, I have all of them. In fact, now having every single achievement, I don't have anything specific to focus on other than hunting. While you can arbitrarily set yourself sub-objectives like getting all the fish crowns, which I'm not doing, stop asking, you get the point. Even in terms of the endgame build, I'm good to go. In Rise, charm farming was always on the cards, same with decos in World, and this was because those grinds had such terrible RNG that getting the rolls you needed was borderline impossible at times. Wilds fixed it though. I had all the decorations I could ever need after around 10 to 15 hours of gameplay since hitting HR 40. Yes, I can still optimize these further by getting multi-purpose decorations, but as we discussed earlier, I truly don't need them. From making my build guide videos, I know there are a lot of players out there that want to mathematically optimize their sets to the decimal point, and there's nothing wrong with that. However, let me enlighten you on something real quick. For 99% of players, you are not going to remotely notice the difference between hitting for 100 damage and hitting for 101 damage. Someone using full Arcveld set isn't going to feel the difference when swapping out for 2 pieces of the Gore set. Someone using 2 pieces of Gore Magala set won't notice the difference when swapping it out for 2 pieces of Guardian Ebony. Yes, there is an objective improvement. No, this won't shave more than 30 seconds off your hunt. While we're on that sentiment, speedrunner sets technically provide the most optimal DPS possible to achieve in the game, but in the hands of a regular player, they will underperform compared to a standard build. Speedrun builds often require the player to play perfectly, or at least close to it, or to play within strict conditions such as staying hitless, or to stay within a low health threshold. I know I'm getting a bit off topic, but I really felt the need to address this area. By all means, if you want to farm out the perfect decorations, there's nothing wrong with that, and I myself will passively be working towards it. But my point being, we don't need to do it, and thus, in Wilds, these types of grinds don't feel that impactful in giving the endgame longevity. Naturally, Artian weapons fall into this same category, but I do want to talk more in detail on these specifically in a future video, so subscribe if you want to hear more on that. The quick version of this point is probably what you already put together. Artian weapons are technically stronger than regular weapons, but if you truly find them that ugly, you don't need to use them, and you'll barely feel a difference. Let me know in the comment section if you agree or disagree with my whole take on this area. Let's loop into my earlier point. If hunting monsters for fun is the true endgame, is the current roster good enough? Objectively, compared to other titles, the current roster is one of the smallest we've ever had. Despite that, I think Capcom did an amazing job, or at the very least they made up for it. At a foundational level, we are super future-proof. Monsters at their core are very well designed, and while small, the roster is super unique from one fight to the next. We have flashy spectacle moments coming from the Apexes, a cinematic feeling fight from Jinderhad, ass-clenching moments from Arcveld and Gore Magala. Even the regular monsters, while they may not be the toughest matchups, still have fun personalities and interesting designs. Throw Guardians, Frenzied and Tempered monsters into the mix, and now all of a sudden, the roster has limitless potential. Guardians are what I'm personally most excited about. This provides a means to reintroduce old monsters with a new coat of paint. Look at Rathalos as a prime example. It's been in every game since the beginning of the franchise, and yet Guardian Rathalos was one of my favourite fights in the game. Though Sugar for me was a pretty uninteresting fight, give him a few of those extra flashy moves and now all of a sudden, Guardian Doshugama is great. Frenzy is also an interesting one. Currently, like 3 monsters can be frenzied, and for some reason their HP pool is non-existent. This is another area I believe will be further developed as we move forward with updates. It would be very easy for Capcom to justify the frenzy spreading to other areas due to the world spine, even though we applied treatment to it in the story. Let's just say it wasn't working fast enough, and so the frenzy's being passed along quicker than we can treat it. At least I think that makes sense. Imagine how lethal a frenzied Raidou could be. Speed monsters up, make them more erratic, and potentially give us new materials used for crafting systems. All of a sudden, there's a whole new mechanic for players to engage with in endgame. Tempered monsters are the safest bet for future content though. We know Capcom loves to add arc-tempered style monsters, which I personally feel these to be more artificially difficult, but they do still force the player to play near perfect to get through the encounters. And we can all agree that does make for challenging content. If you're a new player and you don't know what I mean by arc-tempered, basically think of a regular tempered monster that hits even harder and has more HP. If I was you, expect arc-tempered Apex monsters, Gore and Arcveld. I'm close to saying it's guaranteed. I suppose this wouldn't be a Monster Hunter Wilds video if I didn't speak on performance. I always have to clarify this, but as much as it sucks to not be able to play the game due to optimization issues, please express your thoughts on this in an intelligent manner. There's no need to direct personal insults at the Monster Hunter team. Trust me, they get it by now. So across all platforms, we cannot deny there has been noticeable improvements from the beta. I personally have even gained more FPS since the benchmark tool. Many of the complainants from my previous video or my live chat have not once came back to the channel to tell me they were right, so am I okay to say the issue was resolved for many players? Or at the very least, as much as people loved to complain about the performance, they still bought the game and are probably playing it while watching this. Okay, I am poking a little fun there, but sincerely from what I've seen, performance does still need to be addressed. In the case of PC, well, you just need to look at the game's reviews. The game is currently sitting at mixed, with 99% of negative reviews being on the basis of poor performance. There is definitely still more that can be done in this area, and I agree it's not good enough for the game to launch with such issues. Equally, with that being said, if you're playing on a laptop, what do you expect? Again, joking, sorry, it's too easy. I've heard mixed things from console gamers though, some saying PS5 copies run perfectly fine, others saying you need to run it in performance mode, and when doing so it looks like a PS4 game. Maybe this is a PS5 Pro versus PS5 thing, I'm not sure. With further patches inbound, hopefully Wild gets to where it needs to be in this area. Let me know your experience so far. Ending on a positive note, and this is purely my personal subjective take, for me, Wilds will be my game of the year. There's no doubt about it. The gameplay is exactly to my liking. It's visually stunning, the music's perfect, locations are vibrant and unique. I could go all day. I did say I wanted this video to be as non-biased as possible, and you likely already guessed that I would fall in love with it, so I won't keep yapping on and on. But God, Longsword is just so good. Okay, I'm going to leave you there. I plan on speaking more on some of these topics in more focused direct videos, so subscribe if you want to hear more on those. Likewise, feel free to leave a comment if there's anything you would like to get my thoughts on. Your feedback is greatly appreciated. For now, I'm going to go boot up Wilds and continue playing. Thanks for watching.